I'm actually a little bit nervous to film this today. It seems so real now that I've turned a camera on. Welcome back, everybody. You have landed on the top note. My name is Cherie and I talk about all things fragrance here, and sometimes just anything else that I feel like talking about, like today, which is not going to be a fragrance specific video today. Today I want to address the white elephant in the room, which is what on earth happened to my low buy year in 2021. Well, long story short, I basically allowed my weaknesses to get the better of me and then I just gave up. Although I would like to take this moment to thank you all for not calling me out on that or shaming me for it. In fact, most of the comments I've had in relation to my low buy year have been really supportive and understanding. However, I have given it quite a bit of thought and I think I've distilled down some reasons as to why I think it might have failed. So today I just want to go through and outline where I think the problem was, talk about some of the reasons why I think it failed, and then what I'm going to do about it. Can you see Fritz in the background there? I'll see if I can't zoom on this camera, but I'll see if I can refocus it. There we go. That is why I have an ugly couch cover. Because it's a vintage piece with the beautiful avocado velvet that I picked up a few months ago and I just fell in love with it, but I don't want him to destroy the velvet, and so I have this ugly cover that I put on it, you know, when I'm not using it, basically to protect it from him because he likes to lie on it. But I also couldn't bear to kick him off this morning because he looks so cute. So we're going with the ugly couch cover today. So I basically started my blog, my Instagram and my YouTube channel because I wanted to talk about perfume. And at the time I had a sizable collection, but not huge. And mostly I was surviving off samples and decants to try new things. But over the course of a couple of years, what ultimately ended up happening was that morphing into just a blatant overconsumption and overspending on perfume. And part of it was kind of due to the fact that for a while we were at home. My income remained fairly steady even through the pandemic, and I took that as an opportunity to utilize or repurpose that money that I would have been spending on other things or travel or things like that to basically indulge my fantasies about buying whatever perfume I wanted whenever I wanted it. And so currently I'm trying to track my perfume wardrobe a little bit more closely. I've been trying to enter in my data into my Airtable, which if you haven't seen my video on how I track my perfume, then you can go watch that if it interests you. But in the course of the last couple of weeks, just sort of going through and updating and seeing what I have in the realm of 200 plus bottles. In fact, it's probably more around the 230 to 240 mark. And that's not necessarily huge compared to what other people might have, but it is huge and it's ridiculous because if you think about the fact that over the course of a year, an average person might use between 50 or 100 mils of perfume. Let's say I would go through a little bit more than that just because, you know, I wear several perfumes a day. But even then, I have enough perfume in my house currently to last 2, possibly 3 lifetimes. Lifetimes. That's insane. I got to the end of 2021 thinking that in 2022 I had the opportunity to start with a clean slate and start instilling some good habits again, because I haven't always been like this. And when I made my final purchases in December, I had it in the back of my mind that I wouldn't be purchasing any more for quite some time. And I was really happy with the purchases that I made in the second half of the year, and I really wanted a chance to enjoy those fragrances. But then January rolled around and I found myself looking through the Facebook groups and finding bottles of perfume that I knew I liked because I'd sampled them quite a bit, and then I'd always sort of thought eventually I would add them to my collection. But because they were such a good deal, I just picked them up. Not only that, but towards the end of 2021, in the second half of 2021, I rediscovered a fragrance that I had previously owned and then decluttered because I had written it off as being too sweet and too juvenile for me. However, somebody then sent me a sample in, when I purchased a bottle of something from them, they threw in some samples, and one of the samples was that for perfume. And just on a whim one day, I decided to wear it. And wearing that fragrance intentionally and then paying attention to the progression of it through that wear, I discovered that actually I quite liked it. So then, of course, I was in a panic because it had recently been discontinued and I needed to go try and track a bottle down. That fragrance, by the way, was Miss Dior, the 2017 formulation. And I literally spent hours, if not days, scouring the internet trying to find a bottle of this perfume. And I did eventually find one and bought it. And that whole process, really, when I sat down to think about how much time I had spent obsessing over this one bottle of perfume, I really questioned whether or not it was worth the energy that I had spent on it. Because at the end of the day, I have many perfumes that I love, and I hadn't missed that for the last 2 years since I decluttered the first bottle that I had. And now suddenly I felt the obsessive need to add it to my collection. So I spent a lot of money on perfume just in January. And it was at that point that I kind of started to feel that this pattern of behavior that I had fallen into suddenly felt a little bit ugly. I also think that I'm using the whole I don't have a signature scent mindset as an excuse to just keep buying perfumes to add variety to my perfume wardrobe. The reality is that I think I have so much perfume that I don't have enough time to dedicate to any one of them to determine whether or not I like them enough to wear them more regularly. I think it's a bit of a cop-out for me to say that I'm just not the type of person to have a signature scent. And I think what it really comes down to is that I just choose not to have a signature scent. In the back of my mind, I think also that not having a signature scent is something that I think makes me, a little bit unique and special, even though in the fragrance community, that's not unique and special at all. But all of my life growing up, I've always been the really uncool kid. And even with perfume, every woman in my family had a signature scent. Girls I went to school with in high school had signature scents, and I never had one. So I always kind of felt a little annoyed with myself that I just couldn't be like everybody else. And now that I've discovered this whole fragrance community online, I feel like I'm one of the cool kids all of a sudden. And actually I've come to view the fact that I don't have a signature scent as a bit of a snobby attitude. I'm not saying that anyone else who says they don't have a signature scent is snobby. I'm just talking from how I think I am actually processing this in the back of my mind. And it's a hard thing to admit, okay? It's not pretty. And also I think this whole approach to shopping has developed as a method or a coping mechanism to plug a hole or some area of dissatisfaction in my life that I might be feeling at any given moment. And I just keep telling myself that it's okay because I have a blog and I have a YouTube channel and I have an Instagram, and I need to keep up to date with what's currently coming out. But the reality is my channel has never been about the newest releases. It's always been about talking about fragrances that I find interesting and which I have had a connection with in some way, shape or form. So yeah, it's ugly, and this year I have decided I'm going to be really serious with myself. So I think the low buy was not a great option for me for a number of reasons. First of all, it wasn't a drastic enough change to warrant a change of mindset. Whenever I'm trying to reduce something in my life, allowing myself to have a little bit, whether it's chocolate or screen time or whatever it is, always makes me want it more. And allowing myself to continue to buy perfume during my low buy just fed that ravenous monster. Secondly, because I was still buying, I was still spending a lot of time obsessing over purchases. In fact, it probably got worse during the low buy because I actually would spend more time deliberating and obsessing because I had to make the perfect purchase. Because I couldn't get lots of things, I had to limit what I was buying. It also gave me an out to continue my bad behavior because under the rules that I had set, as long as I was decluttering bottles as I purchased new ones, then it was okay. Initially, I had thought that was a good rule because the pain of having to say goodbye to something would cause me to pause and reconsider purchasing something new. But what ended up happening was I ended up having a really high rotation of fragrances with a very short residence time in my perfume wardrobe in some cases. And so I often didn't even really get that familiar with the fragrances that I'd bought before I decluttered them again. And also what started to happen during my low buy was that during those months where I was buying less bottles, I started to buy things that were a lot more expensive. And I justified that thinking it was okay because I wasn't buying as much. But I was still spending the same amount, if not more in some cases, because I was using the quality over quantity mantra. And finally, I think one of the reasons why the low buy failed for me was the way I set it up. I could technically follow the rules and be within the constraints of what I had set for myself without actually following the intent for which I set those rules up in the first place. So it didn't create a change in behavior. It just changed, it just modified the way I executed that behavior. So what I've decided to do is go cold turkey. What that means is that for the rest of 2022, from February to December, I will not be purchasing any more bottles of perfume. I am doing a no-buy year, and although it's not really quite a year, I'm doing a no-buy 11 months. And I haven't figured out what the rules are going to be yet. I've still got a couple of weeks until February to decide that, but I'm kind of behaving now like it's already started. And basically what that means is I'm not about to go and panic buy a whole heap of perfume, because I kind of already did that in January anyway, but I'm not going to be going out and panic buying a whole heap of perfume that I had on my wish list or anything in the lead up to February. It's basically in place now, but I'm sort of still working out what the constraints and the rules are going to be. So I'll report back to you in February or in a couple of weeks as to what rules I'll be following. And I know what some of you might be thinking. I couldn't even stick to a low buy in 2021, so what business do I have announcing a no buy for 2022? Well, maybe you're not thinking that, but I'm thinking that. So 2022 is going to be about me tackling that little niggle that I mentioned earlier about being a little bit dissatisfied with where I'm at or where my life is at right now. I really want to try and be more creative and more thoughtful and more present with the people around me. And I also really want to be more switched on professionally. I think I was kind of cruising a little bit last year, and then I did have a job change, and now it is really time to immerse myself in that and learn new things that I've been wanting to learn. So I now have that opportunity and I'm really excited about it. So that's got to be a focus for the year. And at the end of the day, you can only wear so much perfume. On any given day, there's probably about a dozen fragrances that I would like to go through, but you just can't. It doesn't work that way. There's only enough time in the day and skin available to you to fully appreciate one or two, possibly three perfume wears on any given day. Also, right now, I'm not actually living the life that requires a lot of the perfumes that I currently own. i.e., I'm not traveling, I'm not going to formal events, we're not going out for dinner, I'm barely leaving the house. The only time I leave the house at the moment is to get groceries, walk the dog, and go to the gym. And there's a YouTuber who I watch, her name is Christina Miha, I think that's how you pronounce her surname. And she is a Canadian. Her channel is all about minimalism and mindful spending and things like that. And she talks about this concept of the fantasy self. And I think I buy perfumes for a fantasy self who has a life that doesn't exist. It's kind of like the equivalent of having a closet full of ball gowns and never going to a ball and not having any sort of everyday casual or work clothes to wear. Don't worry though, this channel is still going to be a perfume review channel. I literally have boxes and boxes of samples and decants, and I haven't even reviewed every perfume in my collection. I typically only upload one video per week, and there's 52 weeks in a year. So if I've got more than 200 bottles of perfume, then basic math would imply that I have several years worth of perfume reviews to do for you. And that leads me to another point in which in 2022, I'm really looking forward to better understanding the perfumes that are in my collection and really developing a good understanding of what I like, because there are fragrances that I have which I like the smell of, but I don't necessarily enjoy wearing that much. So it'll be interesting to work out where all these fragrances sit in my preferences as I wear them throughout the year. More importantly, I want 2022 to be the year that I regain confidence and trust in myself. And there is a quote that I read in Atomic Habits years ago, which has always stuck in my mind. And that is, every action you take is a vote for the person you want to be. And I really like that quote because it doesn't require you to be perfect or to execute perfectly. It just requires consistency and intent. Little actions with intent. I want to be a more considered consumer. I want to really immerse myself and suck out every little ounce of joy that I can from whatever I bring into my life. So, as I said, this is still going to be a perfume channel, and I hope that you will follow along with me this year and maybe share your little wisdoms with me as I progress through what I expect to be a fairly painful period of not being able to buy things that I want to buy So I look forward to sharing my progress and my perfumes with you in 2022. But this video has already been very chatty, so I think I will leave it here. And remember to be kind to yourself and to others. Smell great and enjoy your day ahead. Bye.